So if you've been following along in these videos, you can see that this project has taken a turn, I don't want to say for the worst, but kind of for the worst. Where we left off, I had done panel alignment, I've done some rust repair, and was getting ready to sand the epoxy primer that was put on the car. I was going to use my orbital block with 180 or 220 grit sandpaper and cut everything down moderately. Usually with epoxy you don't have a lot of build, so you quickly can cut through it and hit your base metal or what have you. And I started with 220 grit and found that it was just skimming across the top of the surface. It wasn't cutting it. The primer had been put on about 1.5 years ago after the car was sandblasted. So I progressively went down in grits, back down to 180 on my block, and 180 wouldn't cut it either. So I went as far as 180 on a DA. And depending on where I tried, gave me varying results on how the primer would sand. It either didn't sand at all, or I was just sanding and sanding and sanding, and it really wasn't getting smooth. Which this is something I've never really run into. I've worked in a lot of places that used a lot of different products, and a lot of times epoxies have a lot of different characteristics. One of which I found with some epoxies is they don't sand well. They sand as if you were sanding a piece of rubber. They just kind of take off little balls and leave little balls of epoxy on your sandpaper and gum it up. And some epoxies, on the other hand, the epoxy I use, the Wanda line, Wanda epoxy, it actually, once it's cured, it sands okay. Doesn't sand like sanding primer, but it sands okay. But this was very strange. So I reached out to customer and found out what was put on the car to figure out where my issue was. And he sent me the data sheet of the product, which, again, the brand and product doesn't really matter. The outfit that did the sandblasting, again, that doesn't matter who it is. It's just the place that did the sandblasting originally put this product onto the car. And what I'm finding is the product is good for coating certain things. And on the data sheet, It's a marine epoxy for things that really have nothing to do with automotive. And also, this product is resistant to outdoor conditions, chemicals, and the list goes on and on based on the data sheet. But being resistant to chemicals is what scared me, because being that all that's on the car is epoxy, we're going to have to put more chemicals and introduce more chemicals as you go further with the project, meaning sanding, primer, body filler, sealer, base coat, clear coat, everything has chemicals in it. So if there's an epoxy primer that is resistant to chemicals, you're basically going to end up putting paint over an oil slick. It's not going to stick. It's not going to bond. It's not going to mesh. I reached out to my tech rep who handles my product line and who services my shop, and he came out, we looked at what was here, and based on what we were seeing, I wasn't just the only crazy person. He suggested getting this thing stripped back down to bare metal and starting over. It's unfortunate because the car was as far as it was and appeared to be, you know, going forward. Now we're unfortunately going a little bit backwards. I then was able to reach out to the rep of the product in question, who he had to then reach out to another rep who handles industrial coatings, because this is not an automotive coating. And they didn't really give me a solid enough answer to whether or not whatever I do moving forward will work, or whatever I do moving forward won't fail. I can't do a job based on somebody telling me that, well, it should work. Because if anybody out there knows about paint work, it's the paint job will fail long after, I don't say long after it's finished, but it's not going to fail while it's in the shop. It's going to fail once it's out in the sun and, you know, you get 200 some odd degrees surface temperature. If these chemicals laying on top of one another don't like each other, that's when delamination and things are going to happen, or bubbling, or all the, you know, cliche common paint failures you see happen. So the again, I reached back out to the customer of this car and told him the situation we were in. It is very unfortunate, and we agreed that this is something that had to be done. Now, the doors, obviously the doors and the fenders are removed, the hood's removed, the deck lid's removed. Those are gonna, the doors and the fenders, the valances, those are gonna go out and just get sandblasted. Unfortunately, the car cannot get sandblasted. It can if we spend a whole lot of time removing the body from the frame, putting it on a rotisserie to get these things sandblasted. As you can see, I got a good proportion of it stripped, but this car is a running and driving car, so it would be really going backwards. So those parts will get stripped. The tops of the hood and the deck lid I'm going to continue to strip with sander. Now when I say sander, I have to use this grinder with 36 grit paper or grinding discs, which these are Norton brand 36 orange. These are the top of the line, longest lasting grinding discs. I mean, one of the top of the line. 3M makes a good grinding disc too, but that's the only thing that will cut substantially to get this completely stripped off. With 40 grit on my old school sander, or even my traditional DAs, the 40 grit and the 80 grit will sand the primer. It just takes a little bit longer. So I'm gonna get the jam stripped, get the rocker stripped. There's gonna be areas like in here that don't really need to be concentrated on as much because they get totally covered up, but I'll still try and get some scratches on that stuff to hopefully get some adhesion. I've also gone ahead and did a test panel to really see this section. This is the rear valance to the car. This section here, I sanded with 80 grit. This section right here where the license plate would go, I didn't do anything. I didn't sand it, I didn't do anything. And this section over here, I sanded with 180. And I laid down 2 coats of sanding primer over the top of it. And then I'm going to do a series of tests to see if I get any kind of bubbling, curling, delamination, whatever the case. So I'll let that sit for a day or two before, and let the primer completely cure before I do anything else. Just to see that there's going to be areas here and there on this car that I'm not going to be able to strip, unfortunately. In the window tracks, I can only prep them so well. Now again, all those areas are going to be completely covered, so that really shouldn't be an issue, but whatever the case, just because a piece of trim or something goes over an area, you still want your paint to stay on. I mean, that's, you know, that's just the way I do things. I don't like to think because it's covered up to, you know, half-ass it. Let's say it that way. That's the easiest way for everybody to understand. It's unfortunate that this happened, and when you're going to take on a project like this, sometimes, I mean, this happened because my customer basically took the word of the place that sandblasted the car, and from what I understand, he applied more to it over the top of what they did. I think I'm getting that wrong, or I think I'm getting that right. If I'm wrong, I'm sure I'll be corrected, and that's okay. But because there is 2 layers of color on this, I wish I had a spot where it was cut through that I could show. Let's see if there is. But there's a layer of white, and then, yeah, oh, here we go. Here you can kind of see it here. There's a layer of white on the outside, and then there's a layer kind of underneath it. I thought that might have been an etching primer, but here's some more. Yeah. But apparently it's all the same product. So regardless, in the end, now I'm possibly sanding 2 layers of this off. Plus, the other aspect of this product that is bad is it's good for what it's good for, but this product, each coat, puts down so many mils that till I would put what I have to put on the car to get it to the finish, there would be so many mils of product on this body and these panels that you would have a good chance of having some kind of paint issue. So when you're gonna take on a project yourself, get some help from somebody who knows. I know my supplier have people, they tell me they have people walk in all the time and need the guidance to what to do first as far as what products to use. Because like this, using the wrong product has costs, extra time and extra money, and we've essentially started the project by going in reverse. But as you can see, I mean, this is about probably about 2 days it took to do this, and I probably got the rest of the day today getting the rest of it prepped and cut and stripped and what have you, and then I'll go ahead and bag the car up and epoxy prime it with my epoxy, and a compliant epoxy that's compliant with my primer. I use the Wanda line of products, and another thing to consider or to do when you're doing these projects is don't mix and match epoxies and primers and sealers and paints and clears. Try to stay in the same family, in the same product line, because they're designed to all work together. Some products will not chemically mesh with others, which again can cause substantial failures. So this is where I'm going to leave yous. I'm going to continue stripping primer, and we'll be back when we've made some forward progress and we're back on track. Any questions, comments, anything you want to see or have more questions about, always leave a comment. And like the videos, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.